Hello everyone, I am doing my report on an article called Letters from a Farmer. It's actually a series of articles that was written by J. Hector St. John de Crevecoeur. It's a long name, I know. He was born in France in 1735. At 19 years old, he actually moved away from his hometown and moved across the country to Canada. He fought in the French and Indian War on the French side, and after the war, he moved to America. He traveled the country and worked as a surveyor and a trader, and eventually he found a woman to settle down with. They bought a farm in Orange County, New York. It was 120 acres. That's where they decided to start their family, and they eventually had 3 children. At this time, he actually wrote a series of letters, and they were all in the viewpoint of a English gentleman. This was 7 years before the American Revolutionary War, and he ended up publishing 12 of the letters, but there was a whole bunch of them that were actually written. Letter 3 is the one that's in our book. It's called What is an American? And I'll go into detail about that in a little bit. So the letters were actually written 7 years before the Revolutionary War. And when the Revolutionary War started, he actually moved back to France. He wanted to lay good legal ground for his land there. And after the war, he moved back to America to reunite with his family, only to find out that his wife had passed away and his farm was in shambles. At this time, he moved back to Europe again. So letter number 3 was called What is an American? And it tells the tale of being free in America as you ought to be, according to his actual words. He expressed a lot about how there was no king and no clergyman, and basically you could live life free without having to give up all your money and your belongings to kings and other royalty. You're actually a citizen. In America, he expressed how in Europe he was just a number. He was part of the poor. He, basically had no rights. In America, as we're all aware, we're all citizens. We can all do whatever we would like to do with our lives. He then goes on to describe how all of the people in America was a mix of English, Irish, French, Dutch, German, and Swedes. He has a respect for all of them and what they've done with their life and how they've settled into a new territory. He actually compared himself and all the other settlers as plants in Europe, how they were just a vegetative state and they eventually just died and lost energy. I found that pretty interesting, to compare yourself to a plant. But he then talked about how in America they can have land and bread and protection and consequence. He just seemed very proud of where he lived and where he built a life. He had a very long paragraph that was called What is an American? He said they're either a European or of descendants. He described it as a strange mixture of blood. It was kind of ironic to hear it described that way. Basically, that, a grandparent was 100%, say, European, and then you married an American, and then your children had spouses that were German and other, basically just showing like how America is now a melting pot. It was interesting to see him describe it like that. In conclusion, I feel like this was a very interesting article on the perspective of things back then and how proud he was to be an American and how that still is here today. People can do whatever they want to do and be who they want to be. It's just interesting to see the perspective back then when they really did come from different beginnings and they had something to actually compare it to. It just shows us not to take things for granted, that we actually do live in a great country. Thank you.